I love some good coffee. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of CBBassin. On this episode, we're going to talk about a tournament I fished a week ago on the Tchefuncte River, the Bass Assassin tournament. And I happened to win this one. So to find out how I won it and what lures I used, just stay tuned. But first, let's cue that sweet intro. Alright folks, like I said, this episode is going to be about how I won last week's tournament on the Tchefuncte River. Going into that tournament, I had practiced for the 2 weekends before that. It was all swim jig bite. And it was, they were short striking. I was getting bites, but it was all short strikes. So I knew what I was going to have to do to catch fish. However, I knew what let me rephrase that. I knew what I was going to have to do to get bites, but I had to figure out how to get them in the boat. So I planned on probably putting a trailer hook on my swim jig. Never done this before, but it's worth a shot. But it didn't even get a chance to do it. I started fishing in the morning with the swim jig and the frog. I caught one fish, one small keeper, off of the swim jig, as you see right here. And then, after that, I really wasn't impressed with the swim jig. I wasn't getting any bite. Like the weeks before, probably every other cast, every third cast, you'd get a strike. It was not happening this week. Let's rewind here. This tournament's on Sunday. That Saturday, it rained a lot. A lot. Wow. Look at that, folks. So, I didn't know exactly how that was going to affect me, how I was going to change the water. Now, at the launch, the water got a lot muddier. However, where I was fishing, it was okay. It really didn't change much. So I don't think the rain really affected it any as much as maybe the pressure change. It was after a front, so now it was still cloudy, but it was a higher pressure. So it was higher pressure than it was the day before. So I think it kind of affected them. When I caught those other fish swim jigging, it was bright sunny days, and this was not the same. So not long into the day, I realized I was going to have to change and do something different. So let me go ahead and show you. This is the swim jig I used. It's just a 3/8 ounce RP3 jig, and pretty much a perch pattern. Let's see if it'll focus on it. There you go. Just like a perch color pattern. It looks just like a perch swimming through the water. And that's all I used it for. I would skip it up under docks and under the cypress branches and into the cypress knees. I was using my buzzbait rod actually for it. If I'm flipping a jig into cover, I'm going to use a heavier rod. And but this one, I'm swimming it just like a spinner bait. I'm reeling it and then kind of pulsating with the rod. So I went with my buzzbait rod. It's a 7-1 medium power fast action. It's got a good soft tip on it where I could flick it up under docks and under trees, and it had a good soft tip to let them have the bait, which they were still short striking it. But that was the theory behind using this rod. I used 30-pound braid and a 7-to-1 gear ratio reel. That's my setup for my swim jig that I used. Now, the lure that did the most damage, which I did not expect to play in this tournament. This here frog. This is a Booyah Pad Crasher. I prefer the bigger frogs to the smaller frogs. You know, I think that yes, you do get small fish on them, as you see here. But for the majority of the time, when you get a bite on this, it's going to be a decent fish. It's going to be a solid fish. So that's why I prefer the bigger frogs. I might get a little less bites, but usually it's going to be a good one. And when I'm throwing this, I am throwing these in, like I'll explain to you how I did this tournament, but when I throw these, I'm usually throwing it in thick cover, usually vegetation. Sometimes wood cover, but usually vegetation. So I want big hooks. That's why another reason I used a big frog. 65-pound braid. A 7.5-foot heavy action with a fast tip rod. And a 7-to-1 reel. This is a very heavy duty reel. It's not the Super Duty lures, it's a regular lures, but it's a heavy duty reel, wide spool, so it can really crank them fish out of that heavy cover. I'm using this heavy setup when I'm throwing a frog. Do not, guess I'd say my personal opinion, but I'm learning from experience here. I'm telling you from experience. Don't go small when you're throwing a frog. Don't put a 6'6" medium action with 30-pound fluorocarbon or 20-pound fluorocarbon on it and humming into the middle of the lilies and into the grass patches and into the hyacinth and think you're going to get these fish out. A lot of times you set the hook on a fish with this, it's a good fish. You're going to need power to drag them out. So, you know, check this little clip out right here I'm about to play. It's my big fish I caught. It was the second fish of the day, and you can see how I had to drag her through the lilies. You can see this rod bending pretty bad, and I was able to get her out. I did not boat flip her because when she came to the boat, she was still fighting, really wasn't coming with me, and her head looked so big that I thought she was bigger than she was. If I'd have known she was only just 4'9", I think she was, I'd have boat flipped her. But all I saw was that big head and big mouth, and I thought she was bigger, so I just reached down and grabbed her. But check the video out. There you go. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Get out of there. Get in there, baby. Bam! Woo! Woo! Now, as you guys can see, I caught her way back in there. I had to drag her through a lot, so I'm grateful for my big heavy rod to get it out of there, to get her out of there. Now, I want to talk to y'all a little bit about the technique I use with the frog. On that fish, I happened to notice that what I started doing, I couldn't really throw my swim jig to cover water because there were so many lilies in that area. I just literally threw the frog across the lilies and would reel and twitch it as I was reeling it. So kind of like a buzzbait across the lilies. Well, what I learned is I could do that and then the fish would show themselves just like that big fish did. Watch right here. you saw, once that big fish showed herself, I put the poles down and I could cast on her and catch her. Only a couple times during the day did I actually have to flip on a fish after it struck my frog. Most of them would hit the frog again. But as you can see, all I would do is just go down the bank and twitch it and try to cover water, to try to figure the fish out. You know, when you don't have an exact pattern going, you need to cover water. You need to find out what's going on and where the fish are. And actually, right after I caught that big fish, I caught my third fish of the day, as you see right here. Almost hit you guys. It's a keeper at least. Now as you see, behind that fish, and just to the left of where that fish was caught, was where that big one was caught. There's a drain back there that leads out of the swamp. Well, you know, I started, it dawned on me, hey look, I gotta fish drains. The tide's falling, I gotta fish these drains. They're stacked up. There's two fish right here. I continued to fish that drain pretty heavily. I covered every bit of it, on both sides of it and inside of it, and I left there after I didn't get any more fish. I went straight to my next set of drains that I knew about. Well, there was already people on them. It's, you know, I missed probably 50% of my drains because they had people on them. You know, I couldn't fish them. So I had to just go on down until finally I got to another spot where I could fish a drain. And I caught some little ones. One of them you already saw, the little fish on the frog. And then I caught another keeper in one of the drains. There he is. Up in here. Yeah, you're right. And then that's it. You know, pretty much once I had that fourth fish, it just slowed down. I mean, nothing was biting, and I think at the time I was more, I guess, aggravated at the fact that I couldn't fish all my drains. I couldn't fish them thoroughly because there was people on them, and you know, I think that kind of tossed me off my, you know, my concentration level. I knew something was wrong. I knew something was up. I wasn't getting bit anymore. I knew I had to do something different. I mean, obviously things have changed. They're not biting like they were. Need to figure them out. Shortly after that, I started to realize the tide changed. Literally. The tide was actually coming in now, and these drains really weren't going to work much, you know, anymore anyway, so I needed to just cover water again and try to find them again. So the pattern I found that morning was just shut down now. I had to find out what I could do to catch fish now. I knew where they were at, I just had to find out how to catch them. So I continued to try to stay in the areas of the drains, but I would fish the lilies, the lily fields, and I was trying both just lily pads and lilies mixed with the cypress trees, try to see which one would have the most amount of fish on them. I struggled. The rest of the day I struggled. I don't even think I caught another fish. I might have caught one or two little ones after that fourth keeper. So I went into the weigh-in with 4 fish. You know, I was telling myself, I don't have it. You know, I needed at least my 5th fish to have a chance at getting into money, and I felt like I needed another really good fish, 2 pounds or so, to be able to get into the win. So I felt like I'd lost another one. I felt like I'd thrown another one out, all because I didn't have my 5th fish. And as you can see here, as I was idling in, I even talked about it. Well, it didn't happen today. I didn't get my limit. I got 4 fish, 1 decent. I don't think it's going to do anything. I need 1 more pound-and-a-half range probably to feel good about being at the top. I don't think I'm gonna make it to the, I don't think I'm gonna make it into money. So we'll see. We'll put on a scale and find out. Well, turns out, as I was weighing people in, I am the tournament director, weighmaster, all that. So I was weighing people in, you know, pretty good dude, pretty good sticks on this river. Start looking at their bags and thinking, you know, next thing I know, that I see some couple 5 fish limits come in that are under 5 pounds. And after everybody had weighed in, it was only me left. The highest weight was 5 something, 5'11" I think, or 5'10". I was like, oh yeah. I knew at that point I had this one. I even knew I had the big fish one too. So went and got my fish, brought them to the scale. Did like any good tournament angler would do. Put my 3 little bitty ones in there first, and then I drug the big one out. You know, gotta sandbag people. Gotta psych them out a little bit. Pulled the big one out. Everybody's like, oh man, here we go. So put them on a scale, had 7'11". The big fish was 4'9". Ended up in first and big fish. So very grateful for that win. Very grateful for that fish. She saved me in that tournament. If it wasn't for her, definitely wouldn't have done any good. So hope you guys learn a few things from this episode. And hope you guys like what I'm doing. Hope you guys like these videos. If you do, please subscribe, share them with your friends, like on it, and till the next episode, y'all be careful and have fun.